Story 1. The Motel Diner Shift. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. When you work nights, you see plenty of strange things. Drunks stumbling in, people talking to themselves, random fights breaking out over cold fries. But nothing that screamed paranormal. I was 22 when I took the night shift at a roadside diner connected to a rundown motel just off Highway 14. The kind of place where the neon sign buzzed louder than the customers, where the floor was sticky, and the coffee tasted like burnt tar. Most nights, it was me, the grill cook named Dean, and the motel clerk across the parking lot. From midnight until dawn, we'd get maybe 6 customers if we were lucky. Truckers passing through, lonely travelers, and sometimes locals with nowhere else to go. It was boring mostly, until it wasn't. The night it happened, the diner was empty except for the hum of the refrigerator and Dean cursing at the grill. I was wiping down counters when the doorbell jingled. A man walked in, tall, thin, wearing an old gray suit that looked 2 sizes too big. His hair was slicked back but uneven, like he'd done it with motor oil instead of gel. "Coffee," he said. His voice was rough, dry, like he hadn't spoken in years. "Sure thing," I said, trying to sound casual. "Cream or sugar?" He didn't answer. Just sat at the booth closest to the window, staring out into the parking lot like he was waiting for someone. I brought him the coffee, slid it onto the table, and noticed something strange. His skin. It wasn't pale in the usual sense. It was gray. I tried not to stare. For a while, he just sat there, not touching the cup, not moving. Dean noticed too. "Guy's a freak," he muttered from behind the counter. "Looks like he walked out of a coffin." "Shut up," I whispered. "He can hear you." But the man didn't react, didn't blink, didn't breathe. After about 15 minutes, I started to get this horrible chill. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, even though the heater was rattling away in the corner. And then, I heard something. A dripping sound. Not from the sink. Not from the coffee maker. From him. Tiny drops of water hitting the floor beneath his chair. When I bent down to check, my stomach turned. His shoes were soaked. Not with water. With mud. Thick, black mud that smelled like a graveyard after rain. Finally, I worked up the courage to ask, "Sir, are you staying at the motel?" He turned his head slowly like it was painful. His eyes met mine, and I swear, there was nothing behind them. Just 2 hollow pits that reflected the neon light like glass. "I already checked out," he said. That's when Dean dropped the spatula. "Holy shit," he whispered. I didn't understand at first. But then Dean motioned for me to come behind the counter. He pulled out his phone, typing furiously, and showed me an article. It was from the local paper. About a car accident 3 weeks ago on Highway 14. A man had been killed instantly. His photo stared back at me. The same man. Same gray suit. Same slick back hair. The date of death, exactly 21 days ago. My stomach twisted. I looked back at the booth. Empty. The coffee cup was still there. Steam rising. Untouched. Dean and I locked eyes. Neither of us moved. Then, bang. The door to the diner slammed shut even though no one had touched it. The lights flickered, buzzing so loud it hurt. When they steadied, he was back. But not in the booth. At the counter. Right in front of me. His lips moved, but the voice didn't match. It sounded like it came from the walls themselves. "You shouldn't have seen me." I stumbled back, knocking over the coffee pot. The glass shattered, scalding liquid splashing across the floor. Dean grabbed the phone to call the cops, but the line was dead. The man leaned closer. His skin cracked like dried clay. The smell of dirt and rot filled the air. And then he smiled. "What? Too wide. See you on the road," he whispered. The lights cut out. For 5 long seconds, there was only darkness. Only the sound of dripping mud. When the lights flickered back, he was gone. Dean swore we'd imagined it. A shared hallucination. Sleep deprivation. Whatever excuse made it easier. But the next morning, when the motel clerk came in for breakfast, he asked a question that still chills me to the bone. "Hey," he said casually, "did you see anyone walking around last night? Someone in a gray suit? Guests keep saying they've seen him wandering the parking lot." I froze. Dean dropped his fork. The clerk laughed nervously. "Yeah, they say he looks just like that guy who died on the highway." And that's when I realized the mud on the diner floor hadn't dried. It was still wet, still fresh. What would you do if you served coffee to someone who'd been dead for weeks? Story 2. The neighbor in 6B. I've never been good at living alone. Silence bothers me. Too much space bothers me. That's why, when I finally moved out of my parents' house, I chose an old apartment complex in the city. Cramped, paper-thin walls. Always someone moving around above, below, or beside you. It wasn't nice. The carpet smelled like mildew. The elevator groaned like it was dying. And my unit, 6A, had this constant flicker in the hallway light that maintenance never fixed. But rent was cheap. And cheap meant freedom. The only real downside? The neighbor. Apartment 6B. I didn't meet him at first. All I knew was that someone lived there. I'd hear footsteps late at night. Pacing. Back and forth. Sometimes, a low murmur like he was talking to himself. But whenever I passed his door, it was locked. No sound, no movement. One time I left for work around 3 a.m. for an early shift, and I swear, I saw the peephole darken, like someone was standing just behind it, watching. I brushed it off. People are weird in cities. I never saw him come or go. It was 2 months in when I finally heard his voice. I was microwaving leftovers when someone knocked. Soft. 3 times. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. Except his door. 6B, slightly ajar. Hello. I called out. A voice answered. My voice. Hello. It was perfect. Same pitch. Same nervous tone. My chest tightened. Who's there? Silence. Then the door creaked shut. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I started to drift, I'd hear noises through the wall. First, scraping, like furniture being dragged. Then, tapping, slow, steady, against the wall behind my bed. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up to whispering, so close it felt like it was right in the room. I pressed my ear to the wall and froze. It was my voice again, but it wasn't repeating anything I'd said. It was whispering my thoughts, the exact thing I was thinking in that moment, word for word. I bolted out of bed, heart pounding, and slept in the living room with the TV on. The next morning, I marched to the landlord's office. Who lives in 6B? I demanded. The landlord frowned. No one. That unit's been vacant for 6 months. I stared at him. But I hear him. I've seen. Trust me, he cut me off. No one has the keys but me. 6B is empty. I wanted to argue, but something in his tone made my skin crawl. That night, I came home to find something taped to my door. A note, written in handwriting identical to mine. Stop telling people about me. I called a friend, begged them to come over. By midnight, we were sitting in the living room trying to laugh it off. Then, bang, from the wall behind us. We froze. Bang, bang, bang. My friend's eyes went wide. Someone's in there. I grabbed a broomstick, slammed it against the wall. Shut up, I yelled. The banging stopped. We both let out shaky laughs. But then, my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. Don't tell me to shut up. I couldn't take it anymore. Around 3 a.m., I grabbed my spare key. The landlord had given me the wrong one once. It didn't fit my door, but maybe, and crept into the hallway. The door to 6B stood in front of me. Silent. Still. I tried the key. It turned. The air inside was thick, stale, like no one had breathed it in years. The apartment was empty. Bare floors. Bare walls. Dust everywhere. But in the corner, there was a chair. Facing the wall. And on that wall, dozens of sheets of paper taped up. Each one covered in handwriting. My handwriting. Every word I'd spoken inside my own apartment. Conversations. Phone calls. Even the things I'd whispered to myself in the dark. I backed away, shaking. And then I heard it. Breathing. Coming from the chair. Slowly, the figure sitting there turned its head. And I saw me. Not a look-alike. Not a twin. Me. Smiling. And in my own voice it said, "You're the one in 6B. What would you do if your neighbor turned out to be yourself?" Story 3. The man who followed me. It started on a Wednesday night. I work in retail. Long shifts. Dead feet. By the time I lock up and drag myself home, it's usually past midnight. That night the air was heavy. Streetlights buzzing. Pavement still wet from an earlier rain. As I walked up to my building, I saw him. Tall. Thin. Dressed in all black. Just standing under the streetlight. Not moving. Not smoking. Not on his phone. Just staring at my building. At me. I froze, keys clutched tight. My first thought was, maybe he's waiting for someone. My second thought, maybe I should turn around. But then he smiled. What? Too wide. Like he knew me. I bolted inside, slammed the door, and tried to laugh it off. For a while, nothing happened. But then I started seeing him everywhere. At the bus stop when I left for work. Across the street when I grabbed groceries. Even outside my store one evening, pretending to browse the window display. Always dressed in black. Always watching. One night, as I fumbled for my keys, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Deliberate. I spun around, empty sidewalk. But when I looked up, there he was, standing at the far end. Grinning. It escalated when the phone call started. The first came at 2:03 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered groggy. Nothing but breathing. Who is this? I snapped. The breathing turned into a chuckle. Slow. Oh, familiar. Then a whisper. Nice apartment. I slammed the call, heart hammering. The second call came the next night. Then the next. Always the same, breathing. Whispering. Sometimes my name. Sometimes my address. I went to the police. They shrugged. No threats, no evidence. Could be a prank, they said. I begged them to check the number. It was untraceable. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. One evening, a friend came over. As we talked, she froze mid-sentence. What? I asked. She pointed out the window. "Who's that guy?" My stomach dropped. He was standing across the street again. Same clothes. Same smile. Except this time he raised his hand and waved. I yanked the curtains shut. The worst night of my life came a week later. I woke up in my living room, on the couch, TV still on, but I hadn't fallen asleep there. I always locked my bedroom door at night. Always. When I stumbled back to my room, my heart nearly stopped. My bedroom door was wide open. Inside, on the wall above my bed, written in thick black marker, "Nice apartment." I dropped to the floor, shaking, and noticed something worse. The knife I kept under my pillow was gone. I couldn't stay there. I packed a bag and called a friend to pick me up. As I waited, I paced the living room, heart racing, checking the windows every 2 seconds. Then knock. 3 soft knocks at the door. I froze. Another knock. Slow. Patient. I grabbed my phone, dialed my friend. "Are you here?" Her voice was groggy. "What?" "No, I just left. 10 minutes. The knocking stopped. Then, his voice. Right outside my door. "Let me in." I pressed my back against the wall, trembling. He laughed. Not a man's laugh. My laugh. The same tone. The same rhythm. And then silence. When my friend finally arrived, the hallway was empty. But the knife I'd lost? It was lying right outside my door, and scratched into the wood just above the handle were 3 words. "Be honest. What would you do if someone followed you home every night?" Story 4. The mirror in apartment 6B. I was broke. Apartment hunting in the city means you either pay a fortune or take whatever's cheapest. That's how I ended up in Unit 6B, a dingy 1-bedroom on the 6th floor of an old building that smelled like mildew and dust. The landlord barely looked me in the eye when I signed the lease. Just shoved the keys at me and muttered, "No redecorating. Especially not the mirror." I thought it was a weird rule, until I saw it. The bedroom had a floor-length mirror bolted to the wall. Not just old, ancient, gold frame cracked at the edges. The glass was warped, cloudy, but it wasn't the kind of mirror you could just unscrew. It looked fused into the wall, like it had always been there. That night, I tossed and turned. The city was noisy. Pipes clanked. The radiator hissed. At around 3 a.m. I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Close. I thought it was my neighbors. Thin walls. Then I realized the sound wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the mirror. I sat up, heart pounding. The whisper repeated. My name. Clear. Male voice. I turned on the lamp, staring at the glass. Nothing but my reflection. Well, shaking. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Over the next week, things got worse. When I brushed my teeth, the reflection lagged, just half a second. When I tied my shoes, I caught a glimpse of someone else's hand. At night, I saw movement in the glass even when I was still. And then came the smiles. I'd glance in quickly and catch my reflection grinning when I wasn't. A grin that stretched too wide. Too sharp. One evening in the laundry room, an old woman stopped me. "You're in 6B, aren't you?" she asked. I nodded. Her face went pale. She shook her head. "You need to cover that mirror." I asked why. She only whispered, "It doesn't show you. It shows what wants to be you." Then she hurried away. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of glass tapping. Tap, tap, tap. From the mirror. I froze, pretending to sleep. Then I heard it. My own voice. "Wake up." Slowly, against my will, I opened my eyes. And there I was, standing inside the mirror. Not lying in bed, standing. Grinning. Tapping. The reflection lifted its hand. So did I. No, I didn't. But the reflection did. It wasn't copying me anymore. It was controlling me. I covered the mirror with a sheet. Nailed it down. Tried to forget it. But the whispers seeped through. The tapping got louder. One morning, I woke to find the sheet torn off. The mirror exposed. And written in fog across the glass, though the room was cold. "Let me out." I snapped. Grabbed a hammer. Swung it at the glass. The mirror cracked just once. From the crack, black liquid oozed out. Thick, tar-like. It dripped down the wall, soaking into the carpet. Then a hand pressed against the inside of the mirror. Pale. Long fingers. My hand. It pushed. The glass bulged outward like a balloon. I dropped the hammer and ran. When I returned the next morning with a maintenance worker, the mirror was flawless. No cracks. No stains. But now when I look at it, my reflection doesn't blink. You've heard my stories. 4 nights. For different places. For different nightmares. A diner worker watching shadows move in empty booths. A stalker who followed me through alleys until I realized he might still be outside my window. A missing roommate who left behind nothing but a message no one should ever hear. And a mirror that doesn't reflect me anymore. Different settings. Different faces. But the same feeling. Something out there is always watching. Waiting. Choosing. The scariest part? It's not always ghosts. It's not always demons. It's not even the dark. It's the things and people you see every day. The stranger walking too close. The neighbor whose smile lingers too long. The mirror hanging quietly on your wall. Evil doesn't hide in shadows. It hides in plain sight. In diners, in apartments, in bedrooms, in mirrors, and sometimes it hides inside you. What would you do if the mirror whispered your name? Be honest, would you dare work one more night shift after hearing this?